It was Saturday, February 11th, 2023. A cold, overcast afternoon in Warrington, England. The air was still, the streets were quiet. Nothing seemed out of place. 16-year-old Brianna had spent most of the morning at home. She told her mom she planned to meet two friends at a nearby park. It was a short walk. She said she wouldn't be long. A few hours later, police cars filled that same park. A scene no one in the small community of Culshath would ever forget. That day, dog walkers found a young girl lying motionless on the path that cut through Linear Park. Paramedics rushed to the scene. They tried to save her, but it was too late. The victim was soon identified as Brianna Ghey. The discovery shook the country. A teenager attacked in broad daylight, in a place where families walked every weekend. The story would only grow darker with every new detail investigators uncovered. Brianna was bright, funny, expressive. Her social media presence showed confidence and humor. But those who knew her said she was also shy, thoughtful, and often anxious in crowds. She had recently been studying at a local school that supported students with emotional or social difficulties. It was there she met two classmates, a boy and a girl. We'll call them Jack and Lily. They were the same age as Brianna. Quiet, well-behaved, polite. From the outside, they seemed like normal teenagers, but as police would soon learn, appearances can be deceiving. At first, detectives treated Brianna's death as a possible random attack. The area was searched. Witnesses were interviewed. The park was busy that day. Joggers, dog walkers, families with children. Someone had to have seen something. Within hours, officers collected CCTV footage from shops and homes near the park. The videos showed Brianna walking with two other people shortly before the attack. They matched the descriptions of Jack and Lily. When the footage stopped, Brianna and her friends were entering the wooded path that ran deep into Linear Park. There were no cameras beyond that point. Investigators began building a timeline. They tracked Brianna's last phone messages, her social media activity, and the movements of the two friends she had arranged to meet. By Sunday morning, less than 24 hours after the discovery, police had made two arrests, both teenagers. The story made national headlines, but no one expected what came next. What investigators uncovered wasn't a heat-of-the-moment tragedy. It was something planned, something deliberate, and it had been in motion for weeks. As detectives combed through phones, laptops, and notebooks, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Messages between Jack and Lily describing acts of violence, plans, lists of names, even sketches. It read like a script, a fantasy built between two young people fascinated by death and control. They weren't angry, they weren't seeking revenge, they were curious, and they encouraged each other's curiosity until it became something real. The messages weren't vague. They talked about when, where, how. One of those locations was the park where Brianna was found. Police traced the days leading up to the crime. There were searches for weapons, maps of the park, deleted notes hidden in phone storage. Every clue painted the same picture. This was premeditated. When questioned separately, Jack and Lily told different stories. Each blamed the other. Jack claimed he walked away for a moment and returned to find Lily attacking Brianna. Lily insisted it was Jack who led the assault. Neither story matched the forensic evidence. Both had blood on their clothing. Both had DNA linking them to the scene, and both had sent messages showing intent. It became clear the two had created a private world, a world where fantasy and reality had blurred, a world Brianna tragically walked into, believing she was meeting friends. The question everyone wanted answered was why. There was no clear motive, no argument, no jealousy, no moment of anger. Just two teenagers who, for reasons still not fully understood, planned to take a life. Psychologists later described it as a shared delusion, a meeting of minds that amplified each other's worst impulses. Lily was described as intelligent but detached, fascinated by violence and horror. Jack was quieter, socially withdrawn, easily influenced. Together they reinforced each other's darkness. What one imagined, the other supported. What one suggested, the other encouraged. It was an echo chamber that grew more dangerous with every message they sent. Experts compared it to a psychological phenomenon called folie à deux, the madness of two. When two unstable individuals share the same destructive fantasy and convince each other it's real. Brianna became the target of that fantasy. She wasn't chosen because of anything she did. She was chosen because she was trusting, because she believed they were friends. As the investigation continued, the community struggled to comprehend what had happened. Schools held assemblies. Parents kept their children close. And online, Brianna's story spread worldwide, a symbol of lost innocence and senseless violence. But while the public speculated, detectives followed the evidence, and that evidence was undeniable. In November 2023, nearly 10 months after the crime, Jack and Lily went on trial at Manchester Crown Court. They were both 16 years old by then, but the law still treated them as minors. They denied murder. Each pointed the finger at the other. The trial lasted 18 days. Prosecutors presented text messages, timelines, and expert testimony, evidence showing how deeply the two had planned the killing. Jurors listened as investigators described the steps taken before the attack, the scouting of the location, the acquisition of a weapon, the final meeting that ended in tragedy. When the evidence was read aloud, the courtroom was silent. The families of both defendants sat behind their children. Brianna's family sat across the aisle, grief written on their faces. During closing arguments, the prosecution described the crime as cold, calculated, and entirely without remorse. They said the teenagers acted together, fully aware of what they were doing. After less than 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty, both of them. In February 2024, the court handed down its sentence. Both Jack and Lily were given life imprisonment. The judge set minimum terms of 20 and 22 years before parole could even be considered. She described the crime as beyond comprehension, a deliberate act of exceptional cruelty. For Brianna's family, the verdict brought justice, but not peace. Her mother spoke about her daughter's courage and humor. She said their home felt empty without her laughter. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered holding candles and photographs. They spoke Brianna's name, not in anger, but in remembrance. Her death started national conversations about youth violence, online culture, and how vulnerable teenagers can fall into dangerous patterns without anyone noticing. Teachers, counselors, parents, all began asking harder questions. How do we recognize warning signs before it's too late? And what happens when children lose empathy in a world that constantly shows them pain? What makes this story so haunting is that it could have been prevented. There were no hardened criminals here, no gangs, no weapons from the street, just two young minds, isolated, restless, drawn toward darkness. It's a reminder of how quickly influence can spread between people who feel unseen, and how tragedy can grow quietly behind screens and smiles. Brianna's life was short, but her story carries weight. It forces us to look closer at the connections around us, at the friendships we take for granted, at the emotions we ignore, and the digital spaces we don't always understand. Because in Brianna's story, the danger wasn't a stranger in the dark. It was two people she trusted. Today, Culcheth Linear Park is quiet again. The grass has grown back. The trees have turned through the seasons. Families walk the same paths without realizing what happened there. But for those who know, the air feels heavier, a reminder that evil doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, behind familiar faces, gentle smiles, and the word friend. Brianna was 16 years old. She should have had her whole life ahead of her. Laughter, love, years of ordinary moments. Instead, her name became part of a story. That changed how a country sees violence among its youth. This is Mason Mysteries. Thank you for listening. And remember, not every danger hides in the shadows. Sometimes it walks right beside us.